Hi there and welcome back to Amplify, the Digital Marketing Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm Bob Gentle and every week I'm joined by creators, consultants and practitioners who share what makes their business work. Whether you run your own business or you're just thinking of stepping out on your own for the first time, you're in the right place. If you're new to the show, then welcome along. Take a second right now to subscribe in your podcast player so you don't miss new weekly episodes, and you can dig into some older ones when you finish this one. If it's your first time joining us, then you'll probably want to join our Facebook group too. Just visit the shortcut URL amplifyme.fm/insiders and you'll be taken right there. Now, before I introduce today's guest, I need to explain something. Normally my guests run small businesses, teams, or something like that. This week, that's just not the case. And you'd be forgiven for thinking that maybe this week's guest might be sponsoring the show or something like that. But that's not the case. This week's guest might be a little bit further down the road than some of us. They might have scaled things more than most, but he did it, and it's his story, and I decided it was really relevant. So this week my guest is Tom Kulzer. Tom founded Aweber at the age of 21, and in this episode he shares his story from 90s email marketing pioneer right through to the current day. He literally invented the email autoresponder, and I think he might even be a better snowboarder than me. And both of those are things you might love or hate. And frankly, I love them both. So, welcome along and let's meet Tom. So this week on the podcast, I'm delighted to welcome Tom Kulzer to the show. Tom, do you want to maybe start just by introducing who you are, where you are, and the kind of work you do?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Bob. So again, my name is Tom Kulzer with Aweber. I manage an email marketing platform for small businesses. So I started this myself about almost 21 years ago now. So I've been at this for quite a while. We're based out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in the U.S. And we have about 100,000 small business customers around the world that use our platform to communicate with their customers, with their team members, with their partners, etc. So we've been at this for a while and seen all kinds of interesting things to learn from.
And you said 1998 was when you started this. Mm-hmm. And I was reflecting on what 1998 looked like for me. And I think we're similar ages. And I was remembering Lycos, GeoCities, CompuServe, AOL, bulletin boards, and dial-up modems. So email marketing in 1998 was pretty much it for digital marketing. What possessed you back then? Why email marketing?
Well, it was definitely a very different world then. Honestly, it was a need that I had for myself. And I think as many of your listeners and entrepreneurs you kind of scratch the itch that you have, the problem that you're trying to solve, and you find that other people have the same problems. So back then, before I started Aweber, I was selling wireless modems. So this is before we all had iPhones and such in our pockets that had multi-gigabit connections for fast downloading. It was a very slow modem that you could mount on the back of a laptop that connected in via a serial cable, for those that are familiar with that. And it was kind of I described it as a brick, and I was selling these as a distributor for a particular company. And in going to trade shows and such to represent these products and to introduce people to them, I found the need to follow up with people that I had talked to at these conferences, and that was a very laborious process. I found that over time, the things that I was saying to people were more or less the same thing across different segments of the folks that I was interacting with. So I basically automated it, and I created what was an early marketing automation campaign for following up with people. So when I got back from a conference, I took the people that had expressed interest and gave me their card that asked for more information. I would add them to a list, and I'd send out a series of emails that explained what the product was in more depth and how it could help them, and answered common questions that I got, and sent it over a couple of weeks. And that did very well in that, one, it saved me a lot of time, and two, it generated a lot of additional interest that I didn't have to manually go out and do myself. and that allowed me to spend more time actually working with the people that had expressed interest and wanted to take it through to a sale. Um, that was really a product that I'd kind of, internally developed. And in the course of, I was in college at the time, and in the course of my studies, decided to end up leaving that company and focus on school. And a bunch of other folks that I had shared that same, program with, that were distributors for this company as well in different parts of the country, um, started coming to me and saying, "Hey, like, can I buy that automated program that you had set up for us when you quit and stopped running it? We saw our sales go down because we didn't have that and we had to spend a lot more time on it." So they came to me and said, "Hey, I'll pay for this." And one thing led to another, and AWeber was born as a result. So,
And back in 1998, the idea of a SaaS or software as a service product was probably non-existent, and as we currently know it, as a web-based SaaS. So was it originally a web-based SaaS, or was it a desktop product?
no, it was always a web-based SaaS, and
Wow.
that's really where kind of the value of the product is. Like, you don't have to deal with it and manage a lot of it. So, yeah, I'm trying to think like when the SaaS term really gained prominence. But it was always just a web page that you would go to and interact with it on a web platform. So it was never software that you installed on your computer.
Yeah, for the 90s, that's pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, albeit like the first iterations were very, very simple.
Yeah.
So, what the product that we have today is much more robust than what we had back then. Back then it was just like one web page, and you entered a subject line and a plain text body of an email and a from address, and that was pretty much it.
Right.
So, um,
And so from when you started to, because obviously when you start a business like that, it doesn't necessarily pay you a salary for a while. But how long was it before this was your main occupation?
Well, I had the benefit of being a college student at the time, so it was certainly not something where I was living with much of a, I didn't have much income other than another side job and the modem thing that I was doing. So there wasn't a whole lot of income there to try to replace. But it was within the first, I basically the premise was is I did 2 years of college, and what would have been my junior year of college, I basically said to my parents, like, I'd like to take a semester off. I've got this idea. So far, I think it has a lot of it has a lot of early interest. I want to see what happens with this. And if it works, great, I'll keep doing it. If it doesn't, I'll go back to school. And within the first couple of months, it was very clearly going to be something that was successful. So it was within the first year that, I could live off of what it was,
Yeah.
albeit standard of living when you're coming from college student to living. It doesn't take a whole lot of money for that to, be a reality there. So, but it grew pretty quickly early on.
And these days, when you look at the way SaaS products are built and funded, bootstrapping isn't something that people really aim to do anymore. It's much more venture capitalist funding or bust.
I would actually disagree with that statement to some extent.
Well,
I think it depends on the circles that you travel in, and where you're getting your information about how many companies are bootstrapped versus venture funded. I think there's a lot of glam and glory that goes behind venture funding, and they get a lot of press, but there's a whole lot of bootstrap companies out there. And I would say that there's a lot of bootstrap companies out there that are very successful in and of their own right. You just don't tend to hear about them as much because the media doesn't glamorize that.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Which is a shame to some extent, in my opinion.
Well, it's not my area, and I'm very happy to be educated, because really I see what the rest of the world sees in the media, whereas you're in the thick of it. But my question was really going to be pretty basic, really. At what point did you know, actually, I need to make my first hire? Because when you're bootstrapping a business, that first hire, it really needs to be self-funding.
Yeah.
So what was that first hire for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's honestly something that I look back on as one of my biggest mistakes early on. Not that I did the hire, that I waited so long.
Right.
Um, and it was really something that, in retrospect, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but at the time, if I can put myself in that headspace of the time, it was, wow, I'm gonna be responsible for like someone else's like livelihood, and I have to make sure that I don't screw that up, and that I don't suddenly have a revenue change that causes me to not be able to pay them, being bootstrapped at all. Um, and so I waited a lot longer than I should have, both from some of the economic model of it and just being afraid of making that commitment, because it becomes an ongoing expense. It's the reality of that. But also, I think just somewhat of the like hiring process and like how you pay somebody, dealing with payroll, those things all felt a little daunting to me as a kind of self-taught software engineer, where I wrote all of our initial code and everything. That sort of thing was the sort of thing I could hack out at night, and the repercussions of screwing that up is my, my staging environment the next day didn't work right. But the repercussions of screwing up hiring was I hired the wrong person. They're terrible with customers, or I mess up the taxes, and those sort of things. Like those felt like bigger ramifications to me, and they were kind of scary. And, in hindsight, you place an ad, you interview some people, you try to make the right selection. You hire a payroll company, which are very plentiful these days, and very inexpensive to do, and you outsource dealing with all the taxes and all of that sort of stuff. And that part I think has gotten a lot easier over the years. But
Yeah.
I think that the biggest thing that I look at, so it was our first hire was actually customer solutions. For the first year and a half, I literally did everything in the business. We had multiple thousands of customers before I hired anyone. So I was
Wow.
doing, our customer solutions operation, engineering stuff, or marketing, all the accounting. Like I did everything. Um, and I think having made that hire earlier, which I could have afforded to do, would have freed my time up to do bigger and more important things as a result. So. Um,
And when you're in your early 20s, uh, you don't really have a peer group that's used to running businesses. So did you have mentors that were helping you along there, or did you simply have to make it up as you went along?
there was a fair amount of fake it till you make it, make it
Yeah.
up as you go along. I spent a lot of time in the library, believe it or not. I'm a prolific reader of books and that sort of stuff, because there just wasn't a whole lot of there's obviously knowledge about starting and running businesses, but the whole it's internet marketing and all of the things that go along with the internet were very new at that point, and there weren't a whole lot of resources. I actually I had started an email newsletter for small business owners at the time. That it was a discussion group basically where we could ask each other questions, and it was kind of my early attempt at developing a peer group, of other people that were going through similar experiences, and you could ask questions of. So that was super helpful early on. I think that um, that was really helpful. And a number of years in, I joined another group that was mostly online entrepreneurs that we get together a couple of times a year. And there was a discussion list that was more formalized. And I really got to know those people better. And they were really helpful at giving good feedback and experiences. And now as our business has grown, I've joined other peer groups that are larger businesses. And, so those have
Yeah.
definitely grown and helped. But a lot of it early on was, well, you try something. Well, that didn't work. Try something different. Like, so,
Which brings me nicely to modern email marketing, because for a lot of people that's how it is. And Aweber now, how many clients have you got?
we have over 100,000 clients
Yeah.
around the world that use our platform. So, in all shapes and sizes of businesses, from enterprise down to your solo entrepreneur, nighttime kitchen table, kind of folks. So,
Yeah, I was reflecting on where I first encountered Aweber, and I gone back through my emails to check, and the first email I had that discussed Aweber was from a client in 2011. But the first time I really became properly aware of it was when I read Jeff Walker's book Launch. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yep. Yeah. I know Jeff very well. So
I thought you might.
yeah. Yeah.
But between he and Michael Hyatt, for a long time, I never heard anything but Aweber. But I'm guessing they're not your typical client. What, if you were to say, okay, one business that should be using Aweber now, who would it be? The sort of the Aweber avatar, if you like.
Yeah, well, we have several different avatars, as far as kind of profiles or personas of folks that use our platform from that small business. At the end of the day, anyone that's running a business should be doing some form of email marketing, whether it's our platform or somebody else's. We tend to be more suited to that small business market. We work a lot with agencies that work with small businesses. But we have, whether they're digital marketers, whether they're, car dealerships, like, brick and mortar, stores, e-commerce stores. We work with all of those different types of businesses. So it really ranges the gamut. But everyone should be using some form of email marketing. I think the biggest thing that I'd like to kind of position email marketing is it's not just a sales tool. And I think that's one thing that's like, it's kind of like when that light bulb goes off in your head of thinking of how else can you use email in your business that isn't just generating more sales. Like, so think about hiring someone. So like internally, when we hire a new team member here, we use email marketing to train that new team member about our internal systems and processes and team culture and those sort of things. We have a series of follow-up messages that go to somebody that start right from the moment that they're actually hired, before they even walk through our front door on their first day, kind of setting up their expectations. Similarly, you can use email for training new customers on how to consume your product. So it's not just about the sales aspect. And when you flip that switch and you go, oh, I can use it over here, and I can use it over here, and I can use it over here, and it becomes really powerful time saver, and a really great educational tool that does a lot of work for you that you then don't have to do. So I think that's a really great distinction to make with email that I think a lot of small businesses miss.
Am I right? I don't know if I'm right or wrong. I'm taking a bit of a risk here. But the reason I got excited about Aweber when I first tried it was that it was my first exposure to sequenced-based emails. Mm-hmm. And any of my customers will know that one of the first things I'm going to speak to them about is email sequences. Mm-hmm. Was that your idea?
Yeah, that was basically the first thing that I set up was creating that sequence of emails. Today, some people call them email sequences. Back in the day, we called them, autoresponder follow-up campaigns. The kind of the marketing these days, it's like marketing automation is like the fancy way to say, follow-up emails. And really what it is it's just, it's message 1 on day 1 and message 2 on day 2 or message 3 on day 7. And it's a sequence of emails that you receive over time. Now, obviously with marketing automation, the tools have gotten a lot more sophisticated to be able to do things based on whether you click or open or don't click, those sort of things. But back in the day when I started Aweber, there was one other service that I was aware of that I had found online that basically you could have one kind of instantaneous message when someone subscribed, and then one follow-up message that you could send at some point in the future, whether it was the next day or a number of days later. And I actually contacted the owner of that service back before I wrote the initial versions of Aweber, because I was looking for a solution to my problem. And I was like, hey, can I add more than one follow-up message? And they're like, no, it doesn't do that. I was like, well, can I pay you to add that to your service so that I can send more than one message? And they're like, no. And then I went and built Aweber.
Right.
Did I invent it? No, I don't know. I don't think so. But it was definitely a good idea at the time.
Yeah. I think it's very difficult sometimes to explain the impact of being able to send this kind of autoresponder in a way that people who have never really thought about it would really understand. But I'm rambling a little bit when I get to this question. I'm going to have to go and edit myself afterwards to get this a little bit more articulate. But the most successful time I ever had with email was with Aweber. And it's really, in preparing for this conversation, it really made me reflect on my own experience with email marketing, which really leads me to this question. And I warned you earlier there was going to be a controversial question, and this is it. There are other products that do email marketing now, and there are other products that do sequence-based email marketing. And I've noticed a trend that people that you might call digital marketing influencers will push one product and then they'll push another product. And this seems to be driven by affiliate schemes. And it doesn't seem to matter which SaaS product you're talking about. If you do a YouTube search for, let's say, WordPress plugin for membership sites, you'll get a lot of people telling you how this is the best thing you would ever use. But then you very quickly find out they're running an affiliate scheme behind that. And there's products like ConvertKit, ClickFunnels, and things like that. They have very generous affiliate schemes. Mm-hmm. How much do you feel that impacts the information people can consume about which products are good and which products are bad? You kind of know where I'm going with the question. I'm not really articulating it very clearly.
No, I think it's a great question. I think that we have an affiliate program, a reseller program. We call it an advocate program here, and really what it's designed to do is compensate folks that would be recommending products otherwise and that are usually customers of ours as well. I personally, I look at any sort of recommendation. From an ethics standpoint of like, you have to be 100% transparent with the recommendations that are being made. When you go on and you search for best whatever service online these days, you'll come up with a number of different services that or websites that are like, top 10, CRM products or top 10 email marketing products. A lot of those websites are affiliate based and even sponsorship based, so they want over and above what they are, so it's all essentially paid placement, which and you have to really dig to understand that as a consumer, that's how they're being compensated and how they make their money at the end of the day is oftentimes who's paying them the most is the top recommendation, and not based on any sort of not based on any sort of specific merit that any a comparison kind of thing that's being done. So I think that as a consumer anywhere, when you're reading comments on Amazon before you buy something, like I know it's oftentimes really obvious that it's the business itself or somebody they've paid to write comments on there, extolling the virtues of their product. So I think you just have to be really skeptical as a consumer. Talk to your friends. That's been one of the biggest ways that we've grown over the years is just pure referrals, like word of mouth referrals, and not like people trying to get compensated for their referrals. I think just be skeptical as a consumer. So
I think really where I was coming from was that there's the referral industry and then there's the influencer referral industry.
Yeah.
Where the big names have got clear favorite products, but actually what you don't understand is how incentivized they are.
Oh yeah. Very.
Yeah.
So speaking as one who deals with that, and we have people on our marketing team that do nothing but that. It's a huge thing out there these days, and anybody that is speaking on our behalf, we have very specific requirements that they disclose that with folks. But I know a lot of other folks don't, to where they may not be being paid as a sponsor, but they have equity in companies, and it's like, really? Like, are you disclosing that on a regular basis? Like, you look like you're standalone and then you're just recommending your favorite service, but like, no, you actually own part of the company.
Yeah.
So it's
if
just,
anybody's listening,
as
I'm
a
open.
consumer, be skeptical, ask lots of questions, ask your friends at the end of the day what they use. So, because I think what they use is frequently different than what they might be recommending, which I always get a kick out of.
Okay. So getting back to email for small business, then there are really two questions. The first one will always come to list building, and I am really curious to understand from your perspective. I don't know if you can tell me actually, but if I have a look around, for example, the Aweber integrations section on the website,
Mm-hmm.
and I look at lead generation, there are probably a few dozen integrations there that you're recommending. Do you know if statistically which of those actually perform best? And if you do, can you tell me? There's probably two different answers.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. It's interesting. So we have internally, we definitely have stats on like which integration providers, like which integration providers have customers that have the most like overall kind of lifetime value. So we definitely look at, but different integrations bring different types of customers. Like some will have a lot of users, but those users might be smaller, whereas others might only have a handful of folks that are using both of our platforms, but they're just at a much larger scale. So it really depends. I think what you're asking is more of a conversion rate kind of question of which ones are converting more, more website visitors into actual subscribers.
Yeah, that's
And
correct.
that one's harder because we don't usually have access to the number of visitors that someone is seeing. Um, before they get, like, all we see is the subscriber. We don't see the individual website visitors because those integrations are talking to our API. So we don't have anything on that end customer's website that would tell us how many visitors they're getting. So we don't have conversion rates in what I think you're looking for there specifically.
Yeah.
Speaking specific to our own opt-in forms and flyovers and little widgets that you can put on your website in order to get subscribers, or have people opt in. It ranges a gamut. There's not like one specific type of form that tends to perform the best. And it's highly different depending on what type of industry and those sort of things that you're in. I'd say the biggest thing is you gotta, the biggest thing with having, and generating new subscribers to your list, is remember that at the end of the day, like, I think as marketers, we have a tendency to start talking in numbers and percentages and those sort of things, rather than like kind of go back to like sitting and having a meeting with somebody. Like, there's somebody on the other end of the computer. It's a person, and they have problems, and they're looking for a particular solution to whatever it is that they're having a problem with, and that's why they ended up on your website. So how can you address those problems for them, and how are you adding value to them? And it's similarly, like, be transparent. People don't like to get tricked. So, like, first and foremost, you got to ask for the opt-in. It's always kind of fun when I do a review with a customer on somebody that's like, hey, we want to see how we can increase our subscriber base, and it's like I go to their website, they send me that they say they're having trouble getting new subscribers. I'm like, I can't find a way to sign up.
Yeah.
It's like I'm 8 pages deep in your site and I still haven't found a form to sign up on. It's like you gotta actually ask. And while that makes, like, you and I probably laugh about that, but like, it's very, very common is to just like don't ask, or like the form's all the way at the bottom of the site, or the form is like, you go to the website and like 2 seconds later there's like a popover that comes up and it covers the whole website up. What's the first thing I know that I do when I go to websites that do that? I hit the little X, or I hit escape, or I leave the website. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know who you are. I don't know what value you're providing me yet. I don't want to sign up for anything yet. So it's kind of that, give people some time to actually consume what it is that they're there on your website for, and to see that you might be able to solve their problem, and then ask for the opt-in, but do it in a way that is kind of on their time and not like in your face right away. I think sometimes people kind of shoot themselves in the foot with that sort of thing by getting a little too anxious about asking for it. So they're either too anxious or they don't put it anywhere on their site.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think people are too quick to try and promote with their email. And as you said, remember there's a person on the other end of it, and you need to build a relationship.
Yeah.
And that is from the very first moment they hit your website. And the last thing you would do as a car salesman is rush up and ask someone if they brought their credit card.
Yeah, exactly. So convert now,
Yeah.
buy right now, you'll get 10% off kind of thing. And it's like, no, give me a few moments. I got to check out your product first. I think the other thing that when you're dealing with email in general, is I think that people tend to think, and when they're writing something, they tend to think of like, hey, I'm writing to 100 people or I'm writing to 1,000 people, and which causes them to write their message differently. Um, and it's really important to remember again that when you send an email, you might send it to 1,000 people, but you're sending it to one person at a time. I'm not sitting in a room with 1,000 other people where you're in a stadium and you're reading your email to me through a loudspeaker kind of thing. It's I'm I'm laying in bed reading your email on my phone, or I'm in the passenger seat of my car having a conversation with my wife, and I get your email and I might be consuming it there, or I might be at my at some school function or something. But like you're talking to one person at a time, and I think when you sit down and you're creating your content, like write to your friend or write to the customer that you just talked to that you're really familiar with their business, and write in that context. And I think that context switch changes how you interact with somebody there, and I think it makes it more genuine. It makes it more appealing as a recipient, and I think overall it creates more value that way versus being kind of corporatized around how you communicate and turn people into numbers.
I think you're absolutely right there. And I think where I would like to go now is, I remember when I read Jeff Walker's book Launch, it was the first time anybody really opened my eyes to the simple text-based email. And I know that there are many email marketing platforms now, the majority of which are really geared towards the very flamboyant, fancy graphic promotional emails. You have a website, not a website, a visual email builder now.
Mm-hmm.
But what's your perspective on the very visual versus the simple text-based email?
I think they each have their place. I think there's platforms that lack features that make it sound like the lack of that feature is a conscious decision into what they might be giving recommendations for people to use. But I think they both have their place. They both get equally good delivery. I would statistically the more graphically based emails do get generally better interactions overall, as far as click-through rates and open rates. You can't track an open rate on a plain text message to begin with. But I think that I think they each have their place. And I think that there are a lot of things that you can do with a more, graphically based email these days that can create more engaging, more valuable emails over time. I think that some folks, when they think about what a graphical email is, they might think of like the sales promotion that they get from Target. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's not what the vast majority of messages need to look like, nor would I recommend most small businesses to be sending email that looks like that. What I do recommend that they send is stuff that looks kind of like their website. It's a familiarity thing. At the end of the day, deliverability these days is about engagement. So anything you can do to build familiarity with what it is that you're doing and the expectation that like your email is going to come on a certain time and date, with certain frequency, and look a certain way so that they recognize it, go, oh yeah, that's that email from Bob that I wanted to read. I think is really helpful. But they certainly each have their place. So it really depends on what you're overall going for. But I don't think one is necessarily better than the other for all use cases. So.
And you also mentioned deliverability there. And when I'm working with clients on email marketing, deliverability is a big anxiety because they see these open rates of 5, 10, 15%, and they've got big mailing lists of 7,000 people, which for me, it's a big list. What can people do to try and increase their open rates, that doesn't necessarily mean they just cull a large portion of their list.
Yeah, it's interesting. It depends. There's a lot of individual scenarios that kind of go into it. So I'll take your example there. So you talked about somebody that might have a 7,000 person list and they have a 5% open rate. They have an engagement problem,
Mm.
pure and simple. That they clearly have a group of people there that may have at one time requested information, but has not been reading, not been opening, not been clicking the emails that they're getting. And over time, what that tells the machine learning algorithms at Gmail and Yahoo and Hotmail and so forth is people don't want my emails. If they're not engaging with them, ultimately mailbox providers learn that, oh, they're not engaging with them, so they must not like them, so they're going to put them in the spam folder. And it's not necessarily a permission thing, it's just that they're no longer engaged with it. So depending on how low your open rates actually are, if you've got 5% open rates, you need to be culling your list to some extent. How far back you need to go for engagement, I would generally say, and this is again how marketers often turn things into numbers, of if you've got somebody on you that is subscribed to your content, and I'm assuming you're putting something in there that they need to periodically, they would be compelled to click on to learn more about. If someone's been on your list and getting emails from you on a regular basis, let's say weekly or monthly, for 12 months, and they've not engaged with any of them, they're already gone. Like, let's be honest, they've essentially
Yeah.
unsubscribed without unsubscribing because their email is probably already going to the spam folder. And you have to remember at the same time, like, spam folder these days is not, it's not an all or nothing thing. I can get an email to my Gmail address and you can get one to your Gmail address, and it might go to spam for you, it might go to inbox for me, because I actively engage with it and read it and spend time in it, and Google can see that. Whereas yours, every time you get it, you throw it in the trash folder or you mark it as spam. And so it's very independent, much in the same way that, like, when you go to Google and search for something, email marketing, you're going to see different results than I see, because all of those experiences are very, very individual. So it comes down to a lot of that engagement, and what it is that you're sending. And that's why I talk a lot about that initial opt-in of setting expectations of, what are you going to send people? Why is it valuable to them? And how frequently are you going to send it? Because we'll often see folks that have engagement issues where their sign up form says, sign up to get, 8 tips to, I don't know, like eight camping tips. And then they send them the 8 camping tips, and then they proceed to send them 3 emails a day for the next like 3 months.
Yeah.
Who expects that when they opt in? It's okay if I got told ahead of time, hey, I'm going to send you 3 tips a day about having a better camping experience. Okay, that's great if I want that. But if I don't want 3 emails a day, I'm not going to opt into that. But if I sign up and you don't tell me that, I'm more than likely going to either unsubscribe or I'm going to throw it in the spam folder. I'm going to mark it as spam. And that's that experience that we need to put ourselves in as a recipient of stuff and not as the sender of stuff. So those sorts of engagements and expectation setting up front can help you with the pain later on. We talk about removing folks that are, where their addresses are invalid over time. And that's something that any decent email marketing platform is going to automatically handle. The one thing that I think as an industry, no platform to date that I'm aware of specifically like automatically removes unengaged people. It's something we leave up to individual customers to segment and do. But I really feel like we're kind of approaching a point in time where that almost needs to be just an automated thing that you do,
Yeah.
because they've already essentially unsubscribed it. And all that you're doing by continuing to email them is tell the algorithm, hey, I'm sending all these emails to these people that don't really want it, send it to the spam folder. And over time, that bigger group of unengaged people outshines the group that is still engaged, and you end up sending more and more of your email to spam. So it's a balance. If you've got 15% open rates, you're probably better, but you should still probably be looking at what your overall engagement. Anything above 20, I would generally say you're doing pretty solid. If you're below 10%, you got work to do.
Mm. But is it fair to say then, my interpretation of what you said, of some of the things you said, was that by actually removing the non-engaged people from your list, the signal will be to the AI that the people that are left are engaged, and your deliverability should actually increase, not simply stay static with those people that are left.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, and we can
I,
see it. We can see it in our own internal metrics across thousands of customers, since we have our own like kind of internal reputation system that looks at different customers' open rates and those sort of things. And like, if you have really high open rates, you get delivered with other customers that have really high open rates. If you have really low open rates, you get delivered with other people that have really low open rates. And we can
right.
definitely statistically see when different customers, will call unengaged people, their open rates instantaneously go up, and you see over time you get higher engagement rates, and their open rates tend to climb over time. So it's not, I look at anytime someone tells me, oh, I have 7,000 subscribers or however many it happens to be, whether it's 100 or 7,000 or 700,000, it's like, I don't really care. It's how many folks do you have engaged, and what is the percentage of that overall list that is engaged? Because if you tell me you got 5% open rates, I go, ooh, you got some issues. Unless
Yeah.
you're sending like really plain looking messages where it's not encouraging people to like turn on images in their inbox. But if you have low opens, low click through rates, that's just, you're sending all the wrong signals. It's like dating. You got food in your face, and it's just not sending a good vibe.
Okay. Where I would like to go next, because I'm aware we're going to have to wrap this up quite soon, because I don't want to take up too much of your time. But what I'd like to ask you about is, you're seeing traditionally email marketing platforms now getting involved in things like Facebook ads and social media scheduling and things like that. Where is Aweber headed with its future? I'm not suggesting it should be doing any of those, but clearly you're not standing still. So what's next for Aweber?
Yeah, we have 100 plus people here in our office every day. The vast majority of them are software engineers, so we're constantly iterating on the platform. I think that there is definitely kind of a broad spectrum of different providers out there that are offering different things. I think that there is a lot of room to iterate in email. I think that there are drawbacks to having kind of that all-in-one platform. I kind of describe it as like, master of nothing. You do a lot of things, but you don't do any of them really well.
Yeah.
I think for us, our focus has, over 21 years been on doing email really well and doing it better than anyone else out there does, and doing it simple but powerfully. And I think that is something that we're going to continue to do. We've been working with Google on their AMP for Email program, that basically, it essentially turns an email into a web page, in the sense of, I can send email content now that's interactive in your inbox, where you can fill out forms, where you can click buttons and get responses, much like you would on a regular web page, where I can fill out a survey and it'll show me the survey results like right in the email in real time,
Wow.
dynamically based on everybody else reading and interacting with the message in their inbox. So some really cool technology that's coming out that Gmail supports, that Yahoo's working on support for, as well as other ISPs are working on support for, that I think is going to make emails even more compelling and more engaging than they've been in the past. And building really simple tools for customers to be able to do those really powerful things that help engage their audiences in more meaningful ways. So I don't see us doing a shift to social ad spend management. It's just, there's lots of other providers that do that well out there. And I don't think that there's a whole lot of value in having that all in one single platform. I think that it just becomes
Hmm.
complex, and people don't know where to start, and you lose focus. So
No, I think I'm really quite intrigued by what you described there, because it's not something I'd really heard anything about before. So I'm gonna go and hit Google momentarily.
I'll send you a couple links. So
Yeah.
yeah, but it's AMP for Email, AMP. If you look for AMP for Email, you can either search for that on our site, or there's Google has a number of really good resources as well for it. So
All right. Well, Tom, I guess I've probably taken enough of your time. My last question really should be, if people want to connect with you, how would you like them to do that?
Sure. If you want to reach out to our team here, we're here 24/7, literally every day of the year. So you can reach out to us at aweber.com, aweber.com. If you want to hit me specifically, you can find me at tom@aweber.com, or you can hit me up on Twitter at tkulzer, tkulzer.com, or excuse me, tkulzer at Twitter. So.
Tom Kulzer from AWeber, thank you very much for your time. You've been a great guest.
Hey, thanks for having me, Bob.
My pleasure. As Tom said, email marketing is about relationships, not promotions. Email marketing, when it's done right, allows us to tell stories, build trust, stay front of mind in a way that no other vehicle can. I hope you got something out of Tom's story, and I know I did. Before I go, just a quick reminder to subscribe, and if you haven't already, then join our Facebook group. Again, you can find a link in the show notes, or just go to amplifyme.fm/insiders. If you're a regular listener or a new listener, then I would love for you to connect with me on social media. Follow me on Instagram or Twitter, where I'm at Bob Gentle, and if you do, then message me and I can follow you back. If you enjoyed the show, then I would love for you to review it on iTunes. It would mean a lot to me, and it's the very best way to help me reach more subscribers. My name's Bob Gentle. Thanks again to Tom for giving us his time this week, and to you for listening, and see you next week.